Yeah. So I'm already doing that now. So and this is very important. JavaScript runs where? Inside where? JavaScript runs inside of the browser, true or false, right? All the things that we are currently doing now, especially with your assignment that you worked on, JavaScript runs inside of the browser. Do we all agree with that? So it means that they don't need any pre-processing or any maybe pre-adjusting and all of that. Now, the reason why bundlers are coming in to help is that if we want to load multiple things, then bundlers come to help us. Do we agree with that as well? I think bundlers, we've talked about that. That bundlers are just like we want to load, we want to load, what's it called now? You want to load a JSON file, you want to load even CSS file, because the only way to load CSS file is your style tag or your inner styles and all. But bundlers just come in to make our life easier in terms of like what we can load and what we can run, and then it gives us the ability to use what npm packages, right? Are we all on the same page with that? So when we shifted to React, you saw that I started writing React with just without the bundlers. That was like the first approach. I started writing React without the bundlers. So we're using the CDN approach to just write React. So it means that it's still using the JavaScript inside of our browser. It's still using the JavaScript inside of your browser. So it means that it converts like your React is going to like be on top of your JavaScript, right? And so once we write React, everything gets compiled down, but not I don't want to use compile. Compiled is not the right word in this situation, but everything gets just transpiled, or I don't know, converted back to JS that your browser can understand, because our browser don't understand React. Is that correct? Now our browsers do not understand React, so the browser still understand JS, and the only way is that when we write React at the surface, there is a script tag that runs the React and then turns it into something that your browser can understand. Is that correct? Is that correct? So now the next part of that phase now is that with our bundlers now, with your Vite being the popular one, right? You have Webpack, you have all these other guys now. They are running your application within the Node.js ecosystem. How many of you agree with that? So you would understand that before you can run your application, you need to do npm something, right? So which means that it's going to start the running with at least Node.js behind the scene. And for Vite has a server and a client interface. The server is that it creates a server for us, and we don't have to use live server inside our VS Code anymore. Am I communicating? You do not have to use your live server in your VS Code. So you have to use the server that Vite creates for us. And Vite serves this server on what? Port 5173. And if you are previewing on 4173. So it means that somehow the entry point by which some of our codes now are running, right, especially with the JSX and the React thing, is Node. And that's why also we can't do anything with npm without having Node.js installed. Is that correct as well? You can do anything with npm without having Node.js installed. Okay, so now the conversation is now shifting to what? Next.js inventing something. Next.js is now saying that we will invent something that can run React on Node.js level, and it also run React on what? On what? On the browser. And the in between that process now, the in between of those two processes is something called hydration. How many of you have heard of the word hydration before? How many persons have heard the word hydration before? Oh, very interesting. This looks like uh, this looks like a conference talk. So hydration is in between Next.js telling us that they can run some things right on Node, and they can still run some things inside of the browser. The in between is what I called what hydration. Do you understand that part of the conversation? I think I should be bigger on some of your screens now. Am I the only big tile on your screen? Because I'm the important subject. So before I start going to code, and code will become the important subject. So let me enjoy the fame of being the important subject for a little while. All right. So again, we have what hydration. Yeah, is that a spelling? That's a spelling, hydration. So what that means is that React has a way to first load and start running everything that it's doing. Run it first inside Node.js. That's what Next.js brought. That's the idea when they first came out. They will start running your React application. Instead of everything just running inside of the browser, they will start running it on the Node.js. Since the server that is serving the application is in Node.js. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. So they are now saying that, well, why can't we start running it inside Node? Right? And then, when we are ready, we will send the HTML that what? Because the browser will only understand HTML. So we then send back the HTML that was converted from the React. We will send it to what? To the browser. And then it will now hydrate. The hydration means that the HTML will now kick and become a React application. That is what hydration means. That is, it will hydrate from just being ordinary HTML and it will begin to operate like what? A React application, that a React client-side application. I don't know if you understand this, but I mean, this is very interesting though, because this is like an underlining, way of the building block of how things work behind the scene. So again, what is the advantage of Next.js? Anybody? Next.js came with the idea that we will start running everything on our React. We will run it where? Inside Node.js. Is my audio clear? Or I'm too far from my mic? Okay. Don't let's even go too fast yet now. Let's still talk about the concept first. So, they will start running all the stuff you're doing on Node.js, and then they would now what send you the HTML, and then it will hydrate. That is, it will shape shift to become a React application. So it means that there is now two forms of rendering now. The starting that they are doing on what? The server. Because Node.js is now the starting point, and then you now have the browser, which is the client. So that gives us two contexts. Are we together? And in between, it must hydrate to turn back to a React application. And that's why Next now says, okay, if we can start running some things inside Node.js, then it means that we can also talk to database. So it means that you don't have to have like an API, right, in your Next.js application. They can just directly communicate with database since it is running inside Node.js. And you know that what your other colleagues on the back-end side are doing is what they are studying Node.js, right? How to write backends with their Node.js. So they will be talking to databases. They will be talking to different kind of things that makes their life easy. Are we together? So from there, right, React started what? They started they started thinking more about the two silos now. When I say the two silos, how do we now connect to those using Python? Don't worry, that's not my thing for now. Let me just try to finish my story and then we'll talk about how to connect to those that are using Python later on. So when there are these two silos now, then React itself now, React is backed by Facebook, right? Everybody knows, right? React is backed by Facebook or whatever you call the company now, Meta. So now, the people from React team, they now, obviously, Facebook is trying to lay people off and all of that. Vercel, now, which is like the company that owns Next.js, now becomes a company that employed the React team, some persons from the React team. So it means now that the people who are working on React now, they are now working where now? They are working where? Inside what? Next.js. So it means that everything that they are trying to do, all the experimenting and the ideation that they are trying to do with the server and the client, they are now able to bring it out. Like Vercel is now able to fund it, right? And then they are able to now give us React version 19, which brings what? RSC, React Server Component. That is, now you don't have to only start the running inside the server. You don't have to only start the running inside of the server. You only can also what? You need to what? There will be some component that their job is to run inside the server. Do you understand what I just said now? That there will be some component that their job is to run where? What is the job of those components? To run where? Inside of what? The server. So when these components run inside of the server, then they must be able to what? Come down and send the result of their running from the server down back to what? To the browser. And then the browser can also hydrate it and turn it back into React application. And that is what we are now having with what? The RSC what? Specification. So it is just like JSON when it is sending information down to the browser, but it is a specification of what? It is sending some information, some what? React information. And if you want to also run this yourself, React DOM has render to string. How many of you have seen render to string? If you check react.dev now and you go to API and check React DOM's API, there is render to string. What does render to string means? You give it the React component and you say you should render it to a string, and it will convert that thing into a string for you. It will render that particular React code and render it into what? A JavaScript version of that string. So that's what they do by their server thing that they are saying. That is, they will just let Node.js do this. And why are they doing all of these things? The reason why they are doing all of these things is for performance sake. The reason why they are doing all of this is for what? Performance was sake. Such that, I don't know if I've explained this to you before. I think I was trying to explain this when we were talking about use effect. That before React actually runs on your code, it will first see the index.html inside of your browser, right? Then before it sees that there is a div, right, that has the ID of app, before it sees that there's a script tag, and before it starts running all these things, all those things take time. And that's why sometimes, if you're not very smart, you will see some React application, they will start with what? A blank screen first, before it kind of like loads completely, especially the ones that are poorly designed, right? So if it's come from an engineer that is half-baked, half-cooked, right? Those ones that run away from training, you will understand them. So then the application will start blank, and it means that it's first loading some jargons first, and then before it now turns back into a React client-side application, before React kicks into the place. But the key interesting thing is what? Next.js is controlling what now? Next.js is controlling React. So it means that is the first number one platform where most of these things happen. All the new things happen. So do we understand that point to detail now? So when we now have React 19 and then you have some new things here, they are only working inside Next.js, right? Basically. But for those who know how to set it up in the other ones as well, you can also make it run in your ordinary client-side application. But the core selling feature of most of the things that React 19 is bringing to us is what? The ability to use many of these things first inside Next.js as the first starting point. So again, to bring to the answer and to answer the question that Miriam had, right? That's what form status, action state, form state, and all these hooks, right? They only work inside Next.js. No, they still work in the ordinary React, right? So if you check your React notes, you will see some code sandbox link that I set up with those things inside of them, which still work. But the only major thing is that it is not Next.js, it's just client-side React application. But the key detail is that most of the features that comes along with React 19, they are best suited for what? RSC, right? React Server Components, right? Most of those things, most of those new features are best suited inside Next.js. Do we all have like a form of understanding now? And it doesn't, this is not just only for Miriam, because this is also going to also go far in the sense that if you have gone through the Next.js note, you will see that there's a particular point where I talked about frameworks. How many of us have gone through that point? So I will now start showing you that don't write React as client-side application again. Start writing your React as what now? Start writing your React as what? A framework. Before, we've always pushed the idea of what, just write, create a new, when you want to create a new React application, how do you create a new React application? You just go to Vite and use the Vite template. Is that not correct? So later on, I will now teach you that, okay, many of these ways to write it is not the correct way to write. We then need to start using the framework approach. And what are examples of the framework? The first major one, we all know the first major framework now. Which one is the first major framework? By now, everybody knows the first major framework, right? Which one is the first major framework? Next.js, right? Good. Then we have what now? We have React Router now has their own framework. So it is called what? React Router Framework. How many of you have heard of that before? So there is React Router Framework, and it is a version of what? Remix. How many persons have heard of Remix? Right. So whatever Remix is doing, Remix is owned by, again, they need a company to own all these things. So Remix is owned by which company now? Remix is owned by Shopify. So Remix is owned and controlled by Shopify, and they are using it internally to build a particular project called Hydrogen. So React Router Framework is what? A framework from what? The React Router team that makes it easy for us to start React applications. Again, what is the advantage of frameworks? They come with pre-built defaults. What did I say for framework? They come with what? Pre-built what? Defaults. So that is the advantage. So today, as of today, if you clone a new React application, how many defaults do you have? I don't think you have so much defaults, right? There is no styling opinion. There is no loading strategy, right? But when you clone all these frameworks, if you start Next.js today, it comes in built with style, true or false, right? Tailwind by default, right? So that's a default. It comes in with what? Loading strategies. Next.js has several loading strategies. They have caching strategies. So that is what strategies that comes in default with all these applications. Then React Router now, it comes into with Tailwind as default. Then it has its own loading strategy with something called Loader. It comes with something called Loader, right? And then we then have what? What is the next one? Who can guess the next one? Who wants to take a guess? Who wants to take a guess? Tanstack Start. Tanstack Start. So we have Tanstack Start, which is a framework from what? The Tanstack community as well. And it is built on top of what? Their Tanstack router. So again, it comes with default. It has a lot of defaults on its own. It has like, it's inbuilt with what? Their own Tanstack query. How many of you have heard of Tanstack query? I think I'll still get to that as well, right? Or React Query. It's formerly called React Query, but it's called Tanstack Query now, right? It comes inbuilt with that. It comes inbuilt with Tanstack routing, its own router. It comes in with TRPC. I don't know. Most of you would not have heard of TRPC, right? It's just a server that has types, right? Server that has types, right? And it comes in with loaders as well. They have their own implementation of loaders as well. So I will get into all these details as time goes on. But the reason why I'm giving this context again is because this context is necessary to understand why some things are first in Next.js before it gets to other implementation. Does that make sense? Give me a sec, please. Give me a sec. Yeah, do I? Yeah. Fine, fine, fine. More on class though. Show are very urgent. Okay, I'm fine. ṣé Netflix àwọn ọmọ yẹn ti ṣe padà náà.
mi mọ YouTube ló ń wò báyìí mo rántí pé bóyá wà á receive notification níbi àbíṣe 2 weeks or so
Yeah,
pé
ẹ open app yẹn kẹ ní kí kan recharge card yẹn ẹ kàn lè open YouTube yẹn kẹ try ó yẹ kan recharge card yẹn. Yeah, yeah.
no problem
But
ṣé you are fine.
yeah, I'm fine. I'm fine. Yeah, after the class I'll call you.
Alright.
Um, yeah, sorry about that. So that's the first. I'm not sure that that's what I wanted to talk about, but that's what the opportunity has made us to talk about in the first early phase of today's class. Any question? I don't want to have any. I don't want you to have question though. So even if you have question, I'm praying you will not ask because if we start asking questions about the next year's the framework problem, that's enough one class on its own, right? So you would grow into all these things because there are things that I've iterated out for you to learn. So you would also know when to learn it. But what led us to that question was because Miriam asked, right, that okay, I'm trying to try this out. I'm trying to test these hooks, and I only found out that they could only work in next year's. But that's why the answer now is like not only that the yeah next year's is where they start, but subsequently they get to work in other words, all these other entities as well. So does that make sense? So Miriam, you can check. Um, yeah, you can check. Yay. Question. Oh, Jesus. Jesus. All right, hit me with the question.
Okay. Good evening, sir. Sorry, I came in late, so I'm gonna miss a big chunk of the intro. But I actually have a question regarding the last class. Regarding fetching data, you say we should never use effects. We should use.
No,
But and
no. If you take me to the court like that now, there'll be problem now. Because I always said use can also be used to fetch. I've not told you what to use.
eh,
So,
okay.
but use is fine to do some certain things. Use has limitations. You see that I didn't also talk about the limitation of use as well.
You see that it doesn't mouse the components until the data has been fetched.
Yeah,
So it's
that's
like
for use effect now. I'm also saying use itself now has some limitations as well, which I
yeah,
have not talked about at all. So
okay.
the proper approach is what I will get into maybe into this class or probably Friday. Obviously, there's nothing sweet about the proper approach other than the fact that I want you to use React query or use SWR. How many of you have heard of React query or Tanstack query or SWR?
Yeah.
Now, you will complain that there are external packages. That's where your complaint will first start from. All of you, I know. That's your number one questions. You will start saying that why do we need to install something external before we can fetch data? That's your own business. My business is that don't use effect and use what SWR or use Tanstack query. And I think that somebody who is bold enough should be able to ask why again. Why am I picking those two as things to use? I think I think I think to be honest, right? Tolu Alope, yeah, you want to ask a question, yeah.
Okay, let me try and answer her question, or let me try and answer your question. Why? I think use SWR. I think that one is just a server component. That one fetches on the server, if I'm correct. Then React query. Since I've been using React query, it's different because of you. It has dependencies such that when a data has been fetched, it has caching, and it has a lot of other benefits that come with it. A really whole lot of benefit that come with it. You can't exhaust them. So, but it's yes, I agree with you that you don't use effects to fetch data. That's one. Two, I really have a question for you, and that's based on today's intro. When you were explaining today's intro, yes, we talked about RSC server components, next year's. Personally, and I will say personally again, in my own light, I really think that all these frameworks are trying to solve a problem that was created. I mean, like we created the problem, then we solved the problem, that we are creating the problem again. Because if we left HTML and CSS, and we bundle everything back to HTML and CSS. I just display it back on the browser again. And we are not saying we are doing it because of performance reasons. Personally, we look at performance. If we really want to go deep into performance reasons, I really think that, oh, why didn't you not just stick it at HTML and CSS because it loads extremely fast? So why did you not just stay there? You get, but that's just like I said, is you can just give your own comment on it, and person, it's not like really a question or something. So
Yeah,
thank you.
yeah, I think I appreciate you. We'll get to your motion. Like, thanks for that nice. SWR also does server and client as well. So that's the beauty with SWR. Use SWR. It does server and client, but mostly it's because most people use it on the server most of the time. But it does server and client, and it's simple. The idea with them is that they come with loading mechanisms. Many of them come with their loading and the hero mechanisms built in. But for you, if you are using your use effects, you have to put in your mechanisms. And I think I've talked about this in the last class. You will have to implement your sets loading. You have to do this. Somebody will say custom hooks. Maybe when we get to custom hooks, I will fight those people that will say custom hooks. Maybe somebody will say, why don't we create a use fetch? And then we use it to fetch our own. Don't worry, I will fight you when I get to that junction. But there's no need to fight those group of people now. Good. I like to fight. Yes, so long as it's good fight. So now, to I think the closing part of what Tolu Alope said is like the idea of frameworks, libraries, and all those things, their implementations. Why don't we just go back to just writing our normal HTML? The truth about it is like we've gone beyond that. Like the world has become so much sophisticated that we have gone into the deep chaos of the problems that we have caused. Like somebody invented React and somebody built a business around React. Is that not it? So the person who invented it might not even be taking money because now he open sourced it and then everybody flies with it. So the more the inventions are coming, right, the more they are, and that's the thing with it. Somebody who invented gun, right? Somebody implemented like invented. So gun can be used to defend countries and gun can be used to kill. You know, they have their. Is it the good and the bad? Now I don't want to call it the good and the bad, but at the end of the day, right, is the technology is an invention. When people overuse it, right? People. So the problem with use effect was that they allowed people to overuse use effect. It overstayed its entire usefulness, and then people just destroyed it and overused it and just caused problem everywhere with their use effect problem. So that's so HTML and CSS. I'm not sure we can go back in there. Why? People have to sell. People have to sell the jargons that they are building, and for us as engineers, you have to learn the jargons to also get a job. It's the economy of the world. We just roll like that to for you to survive, for us to put food on the table. We just learn the, and I think another jargon is that is running now. Say hi, right? Hey hi, MCP. You are seeing all those words. It's jargons. Like you're just asking yourself, are we supposed to stress it this much? Yes, I don't know. But the truth is like if you want to survive, you have to learn it. And stay if you want to stay in job and get job, you have to learn it and use it. So that's so Ejeme, I have not answered your question fully, you know. So not like I ignored your question, but I said that today's class is likely to answer your question. Does that make sense? Do you understand? Like so, but I think I mentioned it briefly that I want you to use more of Tanstack query and use SWR. Why? They are built for fetching data. They are built for what? Fetching data. Unlike use effect was not built for fetching data. Use effect was just implemented for that side effect, which was fetching data. Omashola, you wanted to ask a question as well.
Yeah, not actually a question, sir. It's just like having to say something about the React query stuff because since you started mentioning it, I think I saw one of your repo abi your this thing on your GitHub then that you were using I think Taxstar form or query too. So since you started mentioning it, I think I checked it out because I've always used use effect also. If I want to do anything, just use effect. But then I think the moment I check that React query out, I don't have to bother about having to write my abi find my own use state for maybe loading or error or anything. So I can just pick out of the stuff then put my
Jargons.
stuff on out. So it's very nice. So I think that was one of the reasons why you might be telling us, I mean you are telling us that we should go on with
Yeah,
the
yeah. Thank you for that. I'm bullish on it. Like, and that's why I'm bullish on it, and I'm bullying you, all of you, to follow me. And it's not just only me. We have realized that use effect is just like a mistake, and people like us who teach are the people that can control it back. To that's the power that we have as instructors and teachers and educators, right? We need to redirect people back to the right way to do it. I mean, you can't just use a use effect. It doesn't make any sense. It doesn't make any sense. So, I mean, I tried it with my colleague at work, but we are still fighting. But it's a good fight of it too. Those are the nice good fights that you fight when you're working. Yeah, Miriam.
I also think that you should maybe tell art school management to like change the React videos because that one seems a little bit outdated. So they should put new content for next set that is coming on next board.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Maybe let's start here and say that. How many are you advocating that I should be the one to do the recording? Let's see. How many are advocating for me to do the recording? So the idea is that it's a lot of work into like recording content and so to get to get people to I'm not in the country at the moment, so even if I want to record, it's quite difficult. Um, I've been fighting them on the curriculum, so I want them to readjust the curriculum. That's been like one thing I've been fighting my Deji, Amara, Susan, and everybody about. So hopefully, we restructure the curriculum, right? So you would understand that there are slight tweaks from what I'm teaching, from what Maya also started with. You would observe, and then you would see that the tweaks with what I started with is relatable. You will notice that my entry point is relatable. Like it's just taking you from your normal JS where you stopped your JS, and then we are able to just make progress into why there is npm, why there is this, and then Maya just dumped npm on you guys, right? Just npm create React app, like straight up. It doesn't really care where you guys are coming from. So I'm trying to work with the curriculum team. I think there's another person on the curriculum team who you don't see behind the scene as well. Obviously Oluwatobi Loba or something like that, right? So we've been trying to work hard on to see how the curriculum can be. Trust me, if you have listened to me teach, you know that what I want to do is I want you guys to be globally relevant with everything that we are doing. That one is number one key, and is a no-brainer. I want you to have conversations with foreigners, and when I say foreigners now, I'm using that foreigners carefully, not necessarily that way. But I want you to be able to go to any part of the world and tell them your piece of React. And not only this, too, I think I started saying this maybe from your first semester too as well. You will notice when I taught you HTML, I didn't just teach you HTML. I didn't teach you 2 weeks of HTML, open tag and closing tag. I didn't stop there. Because I'm saying that you need to also join this conversation to add to the knowledge. You are not just here to come and be sitting down and somebody's teaching you and consuming. Don't just be a consumer. Let us too now as Africans, at least let us be known as producers, right? Let us be known as people who contribute to the constant global conversation of education, right? So again, that's my future. That's my all the things I'm living my life for and all of that too. So I hope it works out, but I don't want students who will just come and say, maybe they say we should just learn it for survivor, and you just learn, right? And you stop there. But you want to like you want to have conversations with, think about an opportunity. When you have an opportunity to talk with somebody like Ken C. Dots, when you have an opportunity to talk with someone that created React, like what are you going to ask them? Like think about contributing to that thing, right? And that's why we're living. We're not just here to just use these technologies that we've worked on, right? Yeah. So well, that's my opinion. I don't know if it's your opinion, but I wish it's going to be your opinion as well, right? Where you are going to be globally good, so you can work with any foreign company, right? You're not just working for Nigerian companies, right? You are able to contribute to the existing body of knowledge. We're teaching you practical stuff, right? We're teaching you things that are practical and as the theoretical part. But I also want you to be able to contribute to the educational part as well, right? Create your own npm packages, create your own UI libraries. This is my vision. This is my dream, right? This is the reason why I'm teaching. This is the reason why I'm living and doing all the stuff I'm doing too. So hopefully, um, the curriculum that we are working on is ready soon, and then you will see that some of the re-recording will start, and then the next set can benefit. And that's why sometimes too, I also need some of you to also give us feedbacks on, like, okay, I didn't like this in the teaching that we did here, we can improve this here. And that's why the notes is open source, right? So that people can contribute to that existing conversation. Does that make sense? All right. Yeah, I need to catch my breath always because I'm still not 100%. So, good. Anita, I know you should know some of the guys in. I know you're in Ibadan GDG, right? You're part of, like, you've attended GDG events in Ibadan. If you look at the current GDG, I think Bidemi, right? Bidemi Tiamiyu, the current GDG guy there. Yeah, was my mentee. I mentored him around 2017, 2018, right? John Ajaybe as well has also been like, I've also had to teach him and mentor him too at some point. Even though John is not like my senior developer now, John works with old school as an engineer. But like I'm saying that there are track records of like where all these things are coming from, you know. So we don't just jump into all this space, and they know what I want and what I keep reinforcing is the global conversation. We're not just consumers. We need to be producers. The reason why Africa is what it is because we are all a bunch of consumers. Yeah, you can hate me or like me for that. Yeah, Africa will never have no progress except the young generation become producers. The day we still keep consuming what people have done, and I can also lecture you 1 hour on that. So don't let me vex and enter that side of the conversation. But enough of bad leaders too, or these unnecessary old heads that don't know anything. So enough of all that rubbish and all that. You have NWC. Is it NUC now? What's the university body in Nigeria? NUC. Or is it NUC or NUG? I don't even know what their name is now. When they are supposed to improve curriculum, support existing conversation, change curriculum from 1980 something. How many of you are doing computer science? You're doing Cobalt, you're doing Pascal, you're doing all this stupid stuff that the person that even invented it has forgotten that he invented something, and that's what all we are starting our entire life on, right? It's just a waste of precious life, right? So we have to retrain ourselves or reteach ourselves, and there's no electricity. Don't let me just start. Let me do what I can do, which is teaching React. So let me just go back to my class. Okay, so I think we spent like the first 1 hour on different kind of conversations there, and we can then kickstart on. I think state is the next major thing that we're supposed to talk about. Is it state now? I checked the notes very well, but I know that we did a lot of talking about hooks, and that also led to a little bit of conversation around state. So I'm going to share my screen briefly, and then we can, yeah. I think forms is much more important than state, though. But um, I'm going to share my screen. Once you can see my screen, just let me know. Mhm. I was expecting this, though. I'm unable to share my screen, so I will just rejoin the meeting briefly. I'm tired of Google Meet. I'm just tired of Google Meet and their problems. Yeah, apologies for the back and forth there. I'm just still struggling with the whole thing. I mean, this is the today is like even much more terrible than I was anticipating it to look like. If it doesn't work, maybe Miriam can eventually share a screen for me, and then I can run with that. Maybe or any other person that has that. Because yeah, I'm still unable to. This is very strange. I've shut down everything possible and started everything possible, but it still wouldn't come up. So I don't know if anybody wants to assist me. Who is able to assist? Just share your screen if you are able to the React notes. If I want to show code now, how do I show code? Okay, Amashala. Yeah, go ahead, Amashala. Yeah, just go ahead. Hmm. Oh my god. I'm sorry for this back and forth. So why? I'm the organizer now. Why are you not allowing me to even share my screen? I'm supposed to even vex. Alright. So yeah, we've talked about this. So you can go to two. Maybe we can pick from two. And then my Mac wants me to change this Mac. I think so. Maybe we go to page two and then we can no. Don't use forward button. Maybe just go to like the table of content and then we can just change the routing from 80 something to the page route from 80 to 2. Yeah, to 2. So that gives us no, not 82 to 2. Yeah, to 2. Or maybe I should use Brave. I know I've used Brave browser before. Because I think, I don't know, Chrome. I think I need to stop Chrome for a while. That's just my opinion. I don't think I'm interested in problems that comes along with Chrome. Yeah, so go to state. If you go to state now, then we have managing state. So here, the major thing you have here, if you look at the table of contents here, is imperative, how to structure state, lifting up state, then the reducer function, then you do controlled and uncontrolled input, and then keeping your components pure. So it is not too much information, but I just quickly want us to quickly scan through this whole thing right here. So yeah, so imperative and declarative. Your UI is our UI now is an entirely the what is a function of what is a function of what your state, because your UI contains of your HTML. Can we all hear me though? Am I audible? Are we on the same page? We can see the presentation as well. Okay, so thank you. So you would see that without state, your UI will just be ordinary HTML and CSS. Do you agree? Without state, your UI will be ordinary what? HTML and CSS. So to bring that UI to be functional, then we need a form of state. We need a form of state, and the state is like the database, the data that powers your component behind the scene. So your state should take a declarative approach, right? That is, if your UI is like, in React, you declare a component to be counter and you tell us what that component is doing. That is declaring. And that is why it is what? Declarative. Does that make sense? Do you understand why that is declarative? Because you use the return of your functional component to tell us what the UI will represent. So you are declaring this is what we want this UI to look like. While our HTML and ordinary CSS is imperative, right? Because at the end of the day, right, you just write everything. It's it's not it's not like you are declaring. It's not like you're telling us this is like this one is like I'm forcing you. This is how you must. This is what must show. This is what must show, right? This is what must show here. While the thing with your React is that you can conditional render something, right? You can say because of this condition, don't do this. Why you cannot do that with your ordinary HTML? True or false? You can't conditionally render something except you go into JavaScript and then manipulate JavaScript there. But with your ordinary HTML, we can never be able to conditionally render something. You cannot be able to render list, right, with your ordinary HTML except you use your what? Your JavaScript to what? To carry out all those kind of operation. So that's what we are saying when we may say something is what? Declarative. Do we understand? So again, imperative, how to do something, declarative, what to do. That is, this is what I want you to show right here. So now, the power of events in React helps us to create what? Interactivity. Identifying your components' different visual state, right? So you need to understand, okay, when they click this button, what should happen? Okay, it's a toggle. When they click this button, I need to hide this particular information, right? Determine what triggered those state changes and represent the state in the memory using useState. I think by now everybody can use useState. By now we are all able to use useState efficiently and sufficiently, right? That was what our last class was all about, right? That is what our last class was all about, the ability to use your use state. So now, removing any non-essential state variable and connecting them to what? Your event handlers to set your what? Your state. So there is also the setting of the states. Do we agree that there is the setting of the states? Do you agree that there is the setting of the states? And it is in that setting of the state that our UI will respond. Right? It is in the setting of the state that your UI is responding to. It is in the setting of our state that our UI will respond. So if you want to increase the counter of any particular application, right? Let's say you have a increase and decrease button on a particular application, right? You what? You click the increase because the increase has an on-click event handler, right? And then inside of that increase function, there must be a certain state. There must be a certain state. So that is the whole idea of what? Something what? Being reactive, right? Reactive. For our to-do application that we are using, that we are currently working with, right? How do we create a new to-do? For the to-do application that we are working with, how are we able to create a new to-do? There is a form. Is that correct? There is a form, and the form has what? A submit event handler, right? It has a submit event handler, and it is that submit that is triggered anytime our user clicks on what? The submit button. So again, you can see there that what? Something must cause that action to what? To happen. Something must cause the action to happen. So in short, the summary of this page is what? React enforces what? A declarative approach to what? To writing the components. Do we understand? React enforces a declarative what? Approach to writing what? The components. Do we understand? Can I get some thumbs up or whatever, what not and what? Can you go to the next slide? So here, the tip here is that what? This involves listing out all the states your component can be in. We need to also understand how it transitions from those states. So for example, you have the empty, the form has a disabled submit button. Type in, the form has an enabled submit button. Submitting, the form and the button are disabled, right? The spinner appears. Success, the spinner disappears. Success, message appears. Error, spinner disappears, and message error. So look at what you have inside that tip. That is what? A what? an explanation of what how a particular what component move from one state to another. Again, you must be able to list out all the states that your component will be in, and you need to be able to explain to us how it is going to transition, move from each of those states. Declarative programming describes the UI for each of the visual states rather than micromanaging the UI imperative, identifying all its visual states, determining what triggered those state changes, represent the state in the memory using your use state, and connect the event handler to what? To the state. So the next slide gives us an example of something that happens. Next, can you go to the next slide real quick? So in this next slide, can you try to click the submit button? Can you try to click the submit button? Nah, nothing should happen, right? Because it is disabled. So again, what should happen is that the design there should not go on that submit button. There's a UI flaw there. So the UI flaw is that maybe the icon is supposed to change to like a knot. Do you know what that cursor icon means? That icon that shows like you can't do something. That's what should happen there, right? So that you will know that you can't click on anything. Okay. Then it is until you type something inside of that input. That's when that particular word, that's when the button of the submit should be enabled. So, but the major thing I need you to picture right here is that what? See at the top of that form component, how many states do we have there? How many states do we have at the top? We have 3, right? You see the what? The answer, right? You see the error and the status. So if status is success, we are returning H1 to be what? That is right. And then there is what? This handle submit. What is the work of the handle submit? That is what we'll try to what? To carry out what? The form submission process. Right there. And where is the submit form? Now there should be a function called submit form. Should be below the component. There should be another function below the component. Scroll down, yeah. Scroll down. There should be a function below, yeah. So there is this what? Submit form. It's a function that accepts a particular answer. It pretends it is eating a network with what? A set timeout of what? 1.5 what? Seconds. Right? And if the answer that the person put there is what? Is not equals to correct, because we are looking for correct. Correct is the right word that we're looking for. So if it is not equals to correct, then it will reject from our promise. You remember this now, right? It will reject and give us what? This error called what? Good guess, but what? Wrong answer. So can you try to type something wrong in the input? Just type anything wrong in the input and then try to submit it. So you can see that slight delay, and then you can see the good guess but a wrong answer, and try again. So again, what are we trying to explain here is that you need to understand, okay, this is what we should happen if they didn't click on this. This is what should happen when they don't click on this. Now, delete the wrong. I think we're supposed to reset this form as well. We're not resetting, because after every form submission, there should be a reset. Can you scroll to the top? Can you scroll to where we can add form.reset? Can you scroll to the place where we can add form.reset? Can you give that form element an ID? Just give the form element an ID. The form element itself an ID. Form element. Yeah. Give it an ID. Yeah, just give it an ID of just give it anything. Yeah. Don't use form. Use like form. Use. I don't want it to be 2 words, so I also want it to be what. Make it just do correct. Make it correct. Then capital F. Follow it with capital F. Yeah, correct form. Yeah, correct form. Good. So it means that I should be able to have access to that ID in my what? Submit handler. Do you agree? So if you go to the submit handler up the top, just go to the top a little bit. So after that set success, right? Yeah, yeah, and then do correct form dot reset, correct form dot reset, correct form dot reset, and then yeah, and then do that. So type something in there, type something wrong as well again in, okay, types the correct in there because we are not handling it for, yeah, type correct, and let's see. Okay, okay, correct is even hiding the whole thing away. So this, copy this correct form and duplicate it inside of the catch as well. Yeah, yeah, duplicate inside of the catch there. Yeah. So type something wrong now. Let's see. It's not clearing. So it's not seeing this correct form. Why? Because React is not allowing that variable to. It's not allowing that variable to 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 to. Yeah, except we want to clear. You want to use like a set state to clear the input. Yeah, yeah. Set answer to be empty, and then also that works as well. Yeah. Do I like this? I'm not sure. Right, but it works. At the end of the day, Anita, I know I was waiting for your emoji to happen. Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. So again, you would understand what are we trying to do here and teach here is the idea of like, okay, if the input has this value and this value is the correct one, let us try to do submit. Then if it is not the correct one, let us try to what, handle the error. So what you will be doing is that what in all the React application you'll be building, you will need to understand how to arrange your states. Am I saying something that you need to do? Like this is something you'll be doing all the days of your life. And the earlier you like get better with it and the earlier you master it, right? Just understanding state and being able to arrange the state in the right order. So if there is error, it should show this information and it should clear the form input, right? If there is no error, then it should display this particular H1. And that is what we will try to do, right? You will be making sure that you arrange your state in a way where the state makes sense, right? That is anybody who comes also to see that code can also what relate. And much more importantly, it is what? It is UI. The UI is intuitive, right? The UI is intuitive on its own. And the key thing at the top of this one here is what? What is the key thing? We are what? There is a status. That is the key state there. React.useState typing. By default, it is on typing. I'm not even sure it should be on typing too by default. Right? So it's only when we start typing something that we should what? Set it to be what? Typing. Right? And then when we are done with typing, you can either set it to like what? Set it to like maybe error or set it to something. So you can see status inside of the try. There is what? Set status inside the try. There is set status to be what? Success. And inside the catch, there is set status to be what? Typing. So two states there. Our status could either be what? Success state, or could either be what? At the typing phase. Yeah, you can remove that correct dot reset to there, so that we don't drop it there because it's not useful anymore. All right. So that is what one thing that this particular and again look at this undo text area change. Undo text area change is just a function that sets answer, right? So most of the time you will be using your set state inside a function, right? That you can pass to your input. So where are we using the undo text area now? If you go to your GSX now, you will see where we are plugging two things to the input, to the text area. So we are plugging value and we are plugging on change. So we have value, right? And we are plugging on change. And another interesting thing is what? We are disabling what? We are disabling that text area when our state is on submit. Do you see that? If our status is on submit, we are disabling what? The text area. So if you type correct real quick, And you will notice, because it is 1.5 seconds, it might be very fast. So if you click the submit, you will see that input is, that time is very short, but what that thing will do is that it will not allow us to go into that input. If we increase the set timeout maybe by to 5 or by 3, right, the set timeout is the last thing below. So if you increase the set timeout to like maybe to like 5 seconds, you will see that you will not be able to do something inside of what, that text area again, because we are disabling. Try to click inside it again, inside the text area again. So it will not allow you to do something inside, because what, we are disabling it right there. And this is another selling point for React version 19. You notice that I'm handling the state of the form myself. Do you notice that now, Miriam? For those who have been paying attention to the React 19, everything with the form, I am the one handling state status, set typing. Now React 19 comes with this inbuilt. That is, you will know if a form has been submitted, or if a form is busy, or if a form is what, pending. So that comes with it inbuilt, and that's the advantage with what our React version 19. And I'm also going to talk about stack form. I think Omashola mentioned it. So Omashola has been scanning through my repository and been seeing the things I'm doing. See, the world is not a safe world anymore. Maybe I should go and private everything that I'm doing now. So you would see that there is something I will teach. I will teach you React hook forms, and I will also talk about stack form. Right, those are very nice, nice things that I believe that every developer should be using. Right there. Can you go to the next slide? So how to structure states. Look at this example now. Can you go to the code below? Instead of having two different states here, you see that it is better to have one state and have the object inside of that state to be what? X to be what? 0, and Y to be 0. Do you agree with this? So again, we're not saying you should litter everywhere with your state, right? No, don't litter everywhere with your state. There are some states that can be combined together, right? Maybe as an array or as an object. Yes, React does not want your state to be also complex. Do you remember we talked about that when we're talking about our hooks? React does not want your state to be also complex, but at the end of the day too, this is what's better. So identify all the states your components can be in and how you transition from those states. You see that particular number one is coming back over and over. Identify all the states your components can be in and how it transition from those states. Do you see that number one? Like that number one is again linking over and over. Identify how the states your components can be in and how it transitions between those phases. Group related states together. Avoid contradicting states. Avoid unnecessary and state duplication, and avoid deeply nested what? States. Avoid what? Deeply nested state. Why should we avoid deeply nested state? Anybody? Why should we avoid deeply nested states? Why should we avoid deeply nested states? Anybody? Right, because if you're not prop drilling, don't say prop drilling. It is majorly because if you don't know how to do the handling of the state, and you are creating a new word, you are using the same copy of the state, you are mutating, then there will be a re-render problem. Do you understand? Musari, you want to say something? Sorry, I don't know how to call over there for a second. My apologies. Are you here? Olariwaju. Okay. So you should avoid those deeply nested states if you know that you won't be able to handle that state properly. So that you don't mutate. The key thing is we don't mutate. I thought we talked about mutating in the last class, right? Especially when we're talking about hooks. We don't mutate states. We only create fresh copies to avoid what? Re-render. We create fresh copies to avoid re-render. We create fresh copies to avoid re-render. Can you go to the next slide? Okay, maybe we can read what the info said. What's the info saying again? The more states you have, the more complex your component becomes. The more complex your component becomes, the more likely it is to have bugs. Okay, make your state as simple as it can be, but no simpler. Albert Einstein. Are you sure that it's Albert Einstein that said this? Okay. Can you go to the next slide? Was he writing React in his own time? That's what I don't know. Whether in his own time he was writing React and he knew that this code was going to be relevant to us here. So avoid unnecessary and state what? Duplication states. So look at this now. How many of you have done the one on the left hand side before? How many of you have done something like that? You're still creating another state to handle what? Full name. You're creating another state to handle full name. Right. So you are creating, how many states are we creating in this picture now? 3 states. Right? The first name, the last name, and the full name. However, full name can just be what? A derived state. Full name can be what? A derived state. That is, automatically, as those 2 states are both changing, the first name and the last name, then your full name also will be changing. Does that make sense? So this approach is called what? Using what? Our derived what? Derived state. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Using derived what? State. Then use the spread operator to override what? The change. To override change. To override the change part of the state. To override the changed part of the state. I think it should be past something there. The changed part of the state when updating state. But that English itself is not. That English went to a public secondary school in Nigeria. So we have what? Const user, set state, and use state, first name and last name. Then if you want to do the set user, you want to update now, you can then spread the user and pass in what? The first name, or pass in anything you want to do there. So this way you don't have to worry about the state being out of sync, right? And unnecessary nesting of the state. Keeping the state flat and simple as much as possible. Next slide. Then lifting up states. This is a common word that you hear around in React ecosystem. True or false? This is a common word that you hear around in the React ecosystem. Is it a good word? Yeah, I'm not sure it's a good word. But let's see. What does it mean to lift state up? What does it mean to lift state up? So when you lift something up, you want to lift something up so that every other person can see it. True or false? When we lift something up, we want to what? Make sure that everybody else can see it. So in the React context, we have parent and we have the child. So we can gather our state and put it in the parent. And then it means that we have lifted the state up to the parent. Do we understand that? So you've brought your state to be at the parent, and then it means the parent is now sharing the state to the what? To the what? To the child or to the children. So in this case now, our count is what? A lifted state, true or false? Our count is a lifted state, true or false? Right, because it is a state within the parent. And then the parent is the one sharing it down to what? The child. How is the parent sharing those things to the child? What mechanism is that? What mechanism is that? Prop, right? So now we can then pass our count and set count as prop. This is the first thing that you probably do in React and you're amazed. I mean, when you started doing things like this in React, when you're able to pass prop of the set state and and the count and the set count to the prop. And then you see that inside of your child, you can call that set state and it will work. Set count and it will work. Right? It's likely the first thing you probably do in your React and you're like, oh, this makes sense. This makes sense. Right. So that way again, we are lifting that state word up. In our to-do application, all of our state was inside of the to-do app, true or false. In our to-do application that we have been building, all our state is in the to-do app, one place, right? So it means that what? It is at the top. Then we are then using prop to pass it down to everybody. It has the advantages and it has the disadvantages though. But can anybody think of any disadvantage right as we are teaching? Does anybody know any disadvantage right as we are speaking? Prop drilling? What is even prop drilling? Why are you drilling prop? Why do you have to drill pop? Is pop a ball that you have to drill? So it means that, let's say it is not the direct child that needs the state. If it's not the direct child that needs the state, let's say there is what? From this parent now, parent has their own child and they have a grandchild. So it means that the state must flow from where? The state must flow from what? The parent to the direct child and then to the grandchild. Does that make sense? Do you agree with that? Because the state is with the parent, the same way some of you are waiting to inherit your parents' property. And that's why you're not serious with your life. Shots fired. Right. So, yeah, the wealth was first with your own parents' parents, and then your parents inherited the wealth, and they worked hard, they increased the wealth. And then you, I don't know whether you're working hard or not. What are you doing with your life? Okay, you're working hard, that's why you're here at Hot School Africa. Makes sense. So that you can also increase the wealth. So the interesting thing is what the wealth passed from your grandparents to what? To their own child, direct child, and then to you, the grandchild. Do you understand now? And that is where the word prop drilling came into place. Did I explain it a little bit well? That's where the word prop drilling came into place. So it means that before we can access that prop, you need to drill multiple levels of parent, of child, before you can get access to that prop. And the moment prop changes to, there is what? Possibility of what? A re-rendering. Because that prop is actually a state, right? And if a state trigger happens, it will trigger re-render, true or false. So it means that all of the parent and the child along the journey of that prop, they also will be firing the re-rendering. Do you see where the problem with React comes in now? For those of you who are passing prop from one generation to another generation. So you want to keep your state as close as possible to the component that needs it. What did I just say now? We want to keep our state as close as possible to the component that needs it. We want to keep our state as close as possible to the component that needs it. We want to keep our state to the component as close as possible that needs it. Can you go to the next slide? So in this example here, we have panel. Panel has how many prop? Title, children, is active and on show. Then panel just returns some HTML, right? That is, if there is title, render title. Then if it is active, render what's children. But if it is not active, what should you render? You should render show. And then the show has what? An on click button, which is called what? On show. And the on show is coming from our prop. Do we understand panel component? No? The panel component. Right. And then if you go to your accordion, now accordion combines multiple panels together, true or false. The accordion combines multiple panels together. So we have one panel showing coding schools. And the first panel is showing what? Hot School Africa as the title. Is it the one that is active? Yes, because our active index variable is what? 0. And 0 is equals to 0. Then on show, set active index to be what? 0. Pushing to be the institution in Africa and what? The world at large. Here at Hot School Africa, we believe in the power of what? Education to change the world. Yes. And then there are other coding schools. Other coding school Africa are doing great, but there is none that can match the pace of what we are trying to do at Hot School Africa. Is that correct? Am I selling Hot School in the right way? Yes. Okay, so you will notice there now that if I want the other coding school panel to show, what do I need to click on? I need to click on the show. There will be a show button on that second panel. And once I click on it, it will take focus away from what? This Hot School panel and put focus on what? The others. And that is an example of what? The state that controls. Now, what is the state that controls the things that show? The active index. That index state in the accordion is what determines which panel to show. I don't know if you understand what I'm trying to explain, right? It is the state in the accordion, that active index, that determines the panel to show. Can you go to the next slide? All right. Then there is the reducer function. Yeah, this reducer is a pattern that you just cram and use. You cram it and use it. So there is nothing too special there. It's from Redux kind of reducing. It's from Redux kind of system, right? You will understand Redux more when we get to state management. But what this pattern does is that it accepts two things. The reducer function accepts two things: the current state that we are in and the action. And look at this. So this is very, very intuitive too. Very intuitive and explanatory. So let's say your state is 0. Your default state is 0. And the type of action that they carry out is increase. So if they carry out increase, that should increase the count from what? 0 to 1. Do you understand how that reducer sounds now? Right? The reducer is like what? I need to know the kind of action you want to carry out, and then I will carry out the action on your state for you. So it is a pattern. It is a pattern, and most of the time the pattern is implemented in your if statement or a switch. So if the case is increase, it will return an object that contains what? Count to be what? The current state dot count plus 1. And if it's a decrement, it reduces. And if it's a default, it shows error. Now, if I want to add one more state to this now, let's say I want to add one more state to this. I want it to set a new state now. Let's say I want to set a new state, or I want to set the default. If I want to add a new state to set the default now, what do we need to do? What step do we need to carry out? If we want to set a new what? To add a new a new action type, what do I need to do? Anybody who wants to unmute to help us there? Amashala is already helping us by the dramatizing of the cursor on our behalf. Should we just give him permission to speak? All right.
All right, so I think we will add another case.
Right.
When we add another, we will tell the reducer the type of the action type.
Right.
Then from the action type, we can now update whatever it is that we want to
Then
give to.
in the body of the case, you then carry out what that thing should be. So just
Yeah.
like we are increasing, doing a state.count plus 1, then we can then say maybe state.count is equals to the new value that the person is passing, right? That is like a way to force something to happen, right? So again, the reducer pattern is a pattern. And it's not just with React alone. I think it's a pattern in software development that uses a reducer approach. And an example of this in your array is what? Array.reduce. Do we remember? Array.reduce also uses what a reducer pattern. That is, you can reduce something from a set of arrays to a single value or to a single object, right? So reducing pattern or reducer pattern is a common pattern in software development. Does that make sense? But in React, this is the largely approach to do this. Now, what are the states where you should use a reducer function? Let's say you have multiple states, right? And you don't want to be handling the states. Create an handler for each of the states one by one. Then we can use the reducer pattern. Does that make sense? So because when you initiate the hook of React.useReducer, you pass it your reducer function and then you pass it your default state. So this is our reducing function, right? And then you pass it to your initial value. This is similar to array.reduce, true or false? It is similar to array.reduce because you know with array.reduce as well, you pass it what the callback function and then you pass it the initial if there is initial. Is that not correct? I mean, there's nobody that can use reducer array.reduce in this class. So, right, that is what you do. So it returns two things. What are the two things that it returns back to us? It returns a state and what? A dispatch. So what do you think the dispatch will be? Anybody? The dispatch will then be a function that you can then call and tell it what a particular action to do. So you see this dispatch now is a function, and inside of the function, what are we passing? You're passing an object that contains type. So the dispatch is expecting an action, and that action is the object. So the object of type :increment is what? Is describing to the dispatch that this is what I want you to do. So now, if I want to implement the new addition that we just added to set the default now, then we need to have another button, right? We will duplicate one of the buttons to have another button, and then we'll have an on click, and then we will now dispatch and say dispatch type : default or reset, right? And then it will be able to reset it to a particular value. Does that make sense? So reducer pattern is not too common, right? But it's a very smart pattern when you have multiple states to handle. It's a very smart pattern that you should have in your toolbox. Next slide. Controlled inputs, controlled component versus what? Uncontrolled component. So I think that by now you should be used to seeing a state and an input that has value and unchanged. By now, we should be used to seeing that. By now. But that is common. And that way it means that what? It is React that is controlling that input. Am I making sense with that? So anywhere you see a input or whether it's a select, whether it's an input text area, and you can see a value and you can see like an handler to change that value, then it means it's React that is controlling it. And that's why we call those category of component what? Controlled what? Component. They are controlled component. So most of the time, so anytime the unchange is fired, the component is going to re-render, true or false. Anytime the unchange or the event is fired, the component will re-render, true or false. Right, the component will re-render. But for the uncontrolled now, we are storing something in a hook that we have not talked about before. What's the name of that hook that we have not talked about before? React.useRef. So that one is called a reference. And you can put the reference now where? On that input. So that reference will be tracking that input, and it will be tracking the raw HTML value of that input. So even if you are typing, React will not re-render, but it will be keeping that detail inside of this variable called what? Input.ref. Kai. It's a very sweet pattern, but I wouldn't emphasize too much on it now, right? Because when we get to some other further part, I will talk about your use ref. But what I want you to pick from this uncontrolled component is what? It will not re-render, right? It will only be storing every detail that is happening inside which variable? Input ref. So that when you do input ref.current, then you can then use it. Now, somebody is thinking that why don't we all be using uncontrolled component? How many of you are thinking in that manner? since we don't want something to be re-rendering all the time, why don't we just stick with the uncontrolled? Is anybody thinking in that way? Or am I the only person? Okay, since I'm the only person, then I don't need to answer the question. It's my thinking. Chevy, it's my thinking. So the idea is that with the uncontrolled, right, you would need a way to let your UI know what the new update is. Anytime you want to show something on your UI, it is only useful when feedback in the UI is not important. Am I communicating? It is only useful when feedback in the UI is not that important. And is it possible for, well, are there situations where feedback on the UI is not important? Yeah, there are few circumstances like that. Or another possible place where it might also shine is that when you don't need React to undo the feedback of what shows. So maybe your text content in your JavaScript is enough to just handle it, right? You can just keep that handle there. But anytime you want React to trigger a render to be updated about what changed in the UI, and most of the time we often need React to be aware of what changed in our UI. Am I saying something? So most of the time we will need React to be aware of what changed in our UI. So that's why most of the time we don't go for the uncontrolled, right? We go for what's controlled. Can you go to the next slide? So here is an example, right? Line 2 and line 3 has what? A use ref. And the default value is what? Null. Right? So it is a name ref, right? Can you type something inside the name? You type something inside the name, right? Type. And then can you type a email there? Email hat. There should be some validation there at something.com. Yeah, can you submit? Yeah, okay. So what happened here is that what? You can see that there is no need to maybe show like some form of, we are not showing back the result of the name and the email back to our user per se like that. Maybe we're just sending it to a database, right? It's not that important, right? So that is where our value, to access the value now, how do you access your value? Name ref dot current dot what dot value. Name ref dot current dot value. So the only new thing that you are seeing here is the dot current. That is the only magic that is coming here, right there. And so console.log name and email is there, and then you can alert, and then you are clearing the input what manually by ourselves as we're using our what ref there. Can you go to the next slide? I think there should be another one example there in the next slide. Okay, I don't have another example there. Okay, good. So if we want to build something of that nature that uses controlled, right? Can we do that? Can you go back to that slide? Can you go back to the previous one? Can somebody, no, not that one. No, yeah. Can somebody build this one with controlled for us? Can somebody do that for us? I believe everybody in the class should be able to do it. Right? So what is the basic change here? Can somebody quickly unmute and tell us what will be the difference? Can you go to the input, JSX of the input? Scroll down to the JSX of the input. The change will be on the JSX of the input. So what is that change that is happening? So instead of using ref and you're passing it to the name ref, what are we going to now have now? Two props. You're going to have your value, right? Which is going to be equal to what? A state that you're going to be managing. So we need to create the state for them, and then we need what? An unchange to also what? Handle the state. Does that make sense? Does that make sense? Do uncontrolled component only return a string as well? Did we say controlled return string? Control will only return whatever your state value is, right? So that's what control would do, right? But the key detail is that with control, you are the one using your state to control things. And that's why they are called control. While for the uncontrolled, you are allowing HTML, normal input, to just handle its own things. The only thing React is just doing is that React is plugging a reference to it that is making React to sneak into that detail and say, okay, what is now your new value now? So that React can just be aware of what that new value is. And so you will notice that in my handle submit, what was I doing in my handle submit? Before I was able to submit, I'm now asking the ref and say, what is the value inside of you? So it is now what? name ref dot current dot value. That is, I'm sneaking into value into name dot ref, and I want to extract the things inside of it out. If you console.log name ref dot current on your hand, what you will see is what is the input that will be logged in your console. Another thing I want to say is that you notice that you can copy this function into your notes or into any code sandbox and it will work. How many of you notice that the code in these notes are written in this way? They are just functions. They're just components that you can copy, control A, and go and dump anywhere. Whether it is a code pen, a stack blitz, or a code sandbox, you can take them and go and practice with them. And even if you're running locally on your own computer as well, you can use them and quickly practice. Don't say because you need to set up a new project every time, that's why you're not practicing. It's because you're lazy. Just say the truth. Laziness is trying to worry you. The trust fund that you have is what is disturbing you. So if there is no trust fund now, you give you 100%. But because there is a trust fund that you're waiting on, so all these things is worldly, necessary. That's what my language says in Yoruba. It's not necessary. I don't even think all these things are stress. It's not necessary. So it's not necessary to read as you're reading the note to practice. It is necessary. It is of utmost importance to practice as you're writing code. Do we understand? I don't think I should be saying this at this phase though. Alright. Next slide, please. And I think that the next one talks about keeping component pure or not. And that also, we talked about this in the last class. That is, we talked about the difference between a pure function and an impure function. Do you remember? Right? We said, well, pure functions take the same input and return the same value, while your impure ones take a particular value and mutate it internally. They change something internally. But with pure functions, it doesn't change. It's just the value that it takes that it returns. So if add function 2 plus 2, we always return 3. Sorry, 2 plus 2 will return 4. Sorry. Anywhere, any day, anytime. And so when you look at this component now, a pure component, it takes this value, it takes this prop, right? And it will return it will return that same thing right there. Nothing is changing. While the impure, this will always change every now and then. Do you agree? If somebody renders this next tomorrow, it will change, right? It will change, right? Because your date value is changing every now and then. So that's what. So the danger is keep your component pure as much as possible, right? To make rendering predictable. It is easier to manage if it doesn't have any side effect, right? And doesn't depend on anything other than its props and state. Effects are a way to add side effects to your component, and it should be done with caution, and mostly done with what now? Refs, events, and special hooks designed for that purpose. Did I list use effects here? Again, I just only capture them under hooks designed for that purpose. Right, because I know if I put use effect there again, all of you will still go and bastardize use effect and use it anyhow you like. So again, there's the caution. They must be used with caution. All right. Even if I don't want to stop now, this meeting will throw me out. That's so. Can you go to the next slide? I think that should be hand out this. Yeah, that should be hand. Can you go to the table of content of what the next set of things looks like? The table of content of the next set of things looks like. How many classes do we have left though? I think it should be roughly 3 classes left. 3, yeah, roughly 3. I should breathe in, breathe out. This has been a very long semester for me. So the next thing that we're supposed to look at talks about forms, and here we're talking about how to handle form inputs, that is data binding. What is the core thing with your data binding again? The core thing with your data binding is your value and unchange, right? Your value and unchange. That's the core thing there. So we want to see how that works in input of type text. We want to see how it works in your select. We want to see how
Hmm?
it works in different kind of what. Yeah, you can mute your mic. Mashallah. Is it mashallah now? Yeah, you can mute your mic. So, sorry about that. Yeah, I know we're stressing you too much too. So we're not allowing you to be able to talk.
I didn't say anything, so I was not the one talking.
So
No.
maybe it's somebody else that is not muted. I don't know. Uh, Chris was saying something though. Chris said something about mashallah. What is it? Unrelated, mashallah. Waiting your to dos and use action tab they load since that loading never complete. All right. So I think that's all for today's session, though. Normally, so you can quickly go back to the slides and let's. So the thing here is what? How do you handle different kind of inputs now in the React style? Then different form controls, right? Then validation. Now this time around, I'm going to be showing you validation. Validation is key, right? And then I expressly talked about what React hook forms, and we also talk about what tan stack form, right? And then new form features and updates in React 19. So, can you click on that new form features and updates in React 19? Yeah, yeah. So, can you? Um, so if you check, I'm not sure whether it's this one though, but this one uses Zod for. How many of us have heard of Zod before? Oh. Zod is a way to. It's just like a. I think we have. I talked about different kind of different versions of different forms of them. The schema related kind of validation. Zod, valid bot, Yop. I mean, I've heard of Yop. Some persons might have heard of Yop, and some persons might have heard of what's it called now? Validator JS. This is validator JS, right? So the help is that they help us to validate, right? Help us choose the validation. Can you go to the next slide? Too? Can you click on the next slide? Okay, static form. Good. So maybe uh, how come? How come? Maybe when we get there, we'll talk about it more, right? So that's what the next class looks like, right? It's just us doing different kind of things. So if you put something in the input, yeah, put something in the input, or maybe before you put something in the input, try to submit. Yeah, try to submit. So try to submit, and then so you can see that what, right? We're freezing everything up, right? You're saying that what you expect things to happen. How many of you were able to do this with the validator API? The validator API in your project I specified. The validity API, validity constraint API. How many of you were able to do this in your normal in the assignments that you have? Did it? Nobody used validator constraint. Okay, H0. Huh. So you people go and implement validation for me. Okay. All right. Validator constraint API is built in into the browser, built in into your input, and it works, right? But the reason with React is like we almost usually need more control. Yeah, it's not that smooth to use, right? It's not that effective to use. That's one of the limitations that it has. Um, so Zod, this is an example of what validation looks like with Zod. Yeah, we can see what the code base look like. Nothing special. If you scroll down to the next one, I think scroll down to the next one as well. So this uses what Zod and React form as well. If you click submit as well, it will try to what submit, and then it doesn't do validation. And then if you try to drag this code now, try to drag the side in the middle. There's an interface in the middle. No, not that one. Not the one. There's a particular draggables on your close to where the numbers are, the API JS. There's a particular draggable layer. Yeah, that layer is draggable, right? So, focus on the app.js. If you focus on the app.js, right? So, so you can always see again all the codes for all these things are in your notes. You can always click on it, control click on that again, yeah, and then it's not opening. Okay, do control. Are you using Mac? Just the command P. If you're using Mac, just the command P and just type registration form GSX. Right. So you would see how there's a use form and there's this Zod resolver, and then we are describing what the validation should look like, right? And then we are handling that. So I'm going to talk about all of this more, right? This is beautiful because this is the part where all the teachings are going to be more practical, right? We're practically tying things together now in a more practicable sense. These are what you'll be doing day in day out as a front-end engineer. Add validation to a particular project, add little interesting details to to a particular project. These are what you'll be doing, right, as engineers. So um, yeah, I think that's everything. Do we have any question before we bring everything to a close? Any question? So this basically just uses Zod directly. It uses Zod directly. Can you go to can you quickly go to the table of content again? Though? Can you go to the table of content to route page 2 real quick? If you route to page 2, so apart from the forms, right? Can you click on the more hooks? No, more hooks. Yeah, more hooks. And let me see the table of content for more hooks. So here we talk in emphasis more to, like, we talk about what the other hooks, right? Other hooks. How many of you have used anyone here before? Any of the hooks here before? Which one have you used? So there's the use ref that I'm not explaining use ref into detail. Then there's the use reducer as well. Then there's context for storing data, and there's the use layout effect, right? And there's the use deferred value. Who has used use deferred value here? Has anybody used deferred value here? Anybody? I don't expect. It's not the kind of hook you kind of jump into. There's use deferred value and there's use optimistic. They are React. I think use optimistic is React 19 bound. I'm not sure use deferred value is React 19 bound, but they are very interesting concept. Can you go back? Use the back arrow to go to the table of content again. Not the arrow. Use the browser's arrow. The browser's back arrow now. Okay, good. So that's more on hooks, and I think routing. Routing is like the most important part of all I'm going to be teaching you. Routing is the most important part of all I'm going to be teaching you, and it is beautiful. Like like this is the most beautiful part of all the things that you're going to be doing, because all of the applications that we have been building, you will notice that they lack the ability to route. You will notice that they lack ability to do more than one thing on the same page. They lack that ability. Did I talk about data fetching in any place? There must be a place where I talked about data fetching with Tanstack and SWR. I think so. Maybe under state management, we must have talked about something like that under state management. Yeah, data fetching. Yeah. I know my brain is my brain is trying to, yeah. So we talk about React query, using Axios and whatnot, and all these other things there. So yeah, React query there. So there's a lot in this note. There's a lot there, and I think by now you should understand it. This note is explanatory on its own without me being there. How many persons agree? The note is kind of explanatory on its own without me being in the picture, right? You can always try to, if you have questions, you can then reach out to me to clarify the questions though, and then Omoshla, can you go to my well, maybe don't go to my GitHub. Maybe in the next class on Friday we are going to track that. So next class on Friday, please come early. I think what we want to do next class on Friday is two things now. I think two things is that we need to close out hooks, and we need to close out the beginning of routing. Hooks and routing, we need to close those two sessions out, right? Hooks and routing. So please try to come early, and I think you still have one assignment before the exam. I think so. you should still be able to get one more assignment before the exams. Yeah, I believe so. And that should be like a full React project, you know, something smooth. I mean, we've not done any assignments in React now. I mean, and all the assignments I've been doing is group. All the assignment we've been doing is groups now, right? So we need something individual to test us. We need something individual to test us, right? So there should be something that we can work on as individuals, and but the exam is going to be tough. Trust me, exam is going to be tough. That's one thing I can promise you. If I'm not promising you anything, it will be nothing like what you have ever seen. So um, the earlier you start, the earlier you start practicing, the better it is. So yeah, but that will be all for today's class. Though, thank you, Amashala, for standing in gap for us. You can stop sharing, and I'm just gonna wait around if you have any question